Hello, everybody. It's great to see you haven't stayed having lunch and you've come out to talk to us. Of course, although Dinny's dead right, we do want to increase the number of women in this space. That's why we're here. But it'd be nice in the future to have people of Bitcoin, not women of Bitcoin, because we're not that different. Anyway, I want to kick off. It's only have half an hour, and I want to talk to these amazing ladies here about their journey into crypto and Bitcoin. And then we're going to discuss some of the hot topics, why it's important for us to be here today. So if I start off with Claire, do you want to perhaps introduce yourself and briefly, because we only have half an hour, your journey into crypto?
Sure. So my name is Claire. I'm a commodities trader and a financial astrologer and a diehard Bitcoiner, obviously. And my journey into Bitcoin really started in about 2015 when somebody at a party told me about Bitcoin, and I thought that they had lost their mind. They were telling me about mining money on the internet, and I was just like, I don't know, they've lost their mind. And then somebody wrote a book called The Bitcoin Standard in 2018, and I was given this book, and I read it, and it blew my mind. And I realized that there was just a lot more to this, and that's really where my journey started. And I just started going deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole, and yeah, that's really it.
Brilliant, thank you so much. And another trader, Nicola, perhaps you tell your story, please.
Yeah, my name is Nicola. I am actually a school secretary. I'm mother of 2 teenage boys, and my journey into Bitcoin began when I was trading. I was trading Bitcoin, and that was probably the worst thing I could have done because I didn't really fully understand what I was getting myself involved in. I was copy trading, and maybe the guy who I was copying from didn't understand either. I was making huge profits. I was up about 40,000, and I woke up one morning and it was gone. So Bitcoin doing what it does, it took a bit of a nosedive and wiped me out. So that's where I decided I wanted to find out what this Bitcoin was and how could it do that to me. So that's my journey into Bitcoin.
That's a bit of a roller coaster. Claire 2 or Claire 1, whichever you want to do it. Do you want to tell a bit about your backstory and how you got into Bitcoin?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah, I'm Claire. I'm a mum of 4. I home educate my 4 kids. We lived nomadically for about 3.5 years, so we didn't have a home for a long time. My husband is a Bitcoin podcaster, so in 2020 I started actually listening to what he was saying rather than just ignoring it, and it all started to make sense. The world was going crazy, and so I just started listening to the answers, and for me it's financial, but a lot of it is more to do with how it's solving my issues as a mother, more so for my children. And so we moved to the UK just recently, and I noticed that at these conferences there was hardly any women there. In fact, there's quite a lot here in comparison. And so I wanted to make women feel comfortable in the Bitcoin space, so I set up meetups in London to help educate women, to make women feel comfortable, to ask the questions, and so I'm hoping to do that across everywhere, really, or other women will start to do it.
Well, I'm very impressed that you listened to your husband. Okay, and Samuela, do you want to tell your story, please?
Hello, everyone. I am Samuela Davidova, and I'm here to represent Liberland. We're building the freest country in the world, and of course, we have to be backed by Bitcoin. I think that we are the first country in the world that has the full fund of the country in Bitcoin, so we're pretty glad about that. But of course, we have our own currency. One is used for the governance, it's a Liberland Merit, and then we have Liberland Dollar for the everyday sort of things. But I would say that to me, what Bitcoin is, it's a great representation of value in terms of sovereignty and freedom. So yeah, I'm happy to join you here today.
Well, thank you very much. Of course, we've paths across many times. My claim to fame is that I was the first female elected congresswoman of Liberland last year, so that was a lot of fun. The elections come every 3 months, so it only lasted 3 months. Never mind. Anyway, so I think what I'd like to talk about today and why we're here is that, why women in Bitcoin? Why do we need to emphasize this? And I'm going to go to you, Nicola, first. Why do you think women need to be here?
So I think as a mother, I think it's really important for us to educate our children, for the next generation to understand that the fiat system is broke and that Bitcoin fixes that. And I'm really passionate about Bitcoin and it being brought into the education world, in schools even.
No, that's cool.
Future.
And I think we do know that when you educate and equip a woman with money, not only does she rise, her family rises and the village rises. So that's kind of a known fact. That's why it's so important. And I think, Claire, you're also going to concur with that, as you said earlier, being a mother is so important to you.
Completely. For me, you just start to see that your children are not going to be able to afford homes anymore, and because of the money's broken, not because of the value of the house has changed. So in order to be able to give your children tools, you need to educate them about Bitcoin. And so that's what I've been doing. That's what brings me the interest to Bitcoin.
Cool. And Claire, you're actually a trader. So you said at first, when you first came across Bitcoin, you went, this is weird. So did you actually start trading Bitcoin there afterwards and other currencies as well, I presume?
Yeah, after that. And yeah, I just thought more the concept of mining money on the internet. Where does it get its value? This sounds like a scam. Like all of those questions that everybody has for me 24 hours a day now. And that I'm really happy to answer. But as I started trading, I think one of the things about trading and also about Bitcoin is that it does give you this freedom and you're not tied to anybody else. And I think that that's really important for women. I mean, I think it's really important for men as well. I just want to put that out there too. I think most women in Bitcoin are like you, and it's like people in Bitcoin. But really, I think the focus for women is that we have kind of come out of the homes where we were completely dependent on your husband or something like that, and then came into the workforce and have been sort of put into this fiat scam. And so you're still working for somebody else, you're dependent on somebody else. And what Bitcoin allows you to do is, if you want to be home with your kids, you've put things aside in Bitcoin, and it gives you that freedom to do that. Or if you want to have your own business, Bitcoin supports that, and you're not dependent on somebody else. And I think that's really important for women.
If I go back to value, Samuela, how do you see the value of Bitcoin as opposed to fiat, especially, as I say, you represent an emerging country?
Thank you, yeah. Well, I would say that it represents, as I mentioned, sovereignty, freedom, the willingness to own our own life and take responsibility for it. And so it makes sense that we're a sort of libertarian country, we're a monarchy with minimum government, right? And so it attracts people who are around Web3 space because it represents the same value. So like libertarians, I would say, want to have ownership of their life, and people who are into Bitcoin want to have ownership of their currency, of their money. And money is the value that they created in exchange for another value. So yes, you want to have ownership of your value.
And I think it's often said that the lack of women is as a result of women being risk averse, which is actually, it's a myth. It's the same way that breakfast is not the most important meal of the day, unless you're working for Kellogg's and lots of other things. So maybe, Claire, I'll ask you, sorry, to Claire Marrinan. So how do you address that issue of being, it's a risky thing and women shouldn't get involved with it?
I don't know how I would approach that, but I think a lot of the time that women don't come along to my meetups is because they're so preoccupied with everything else, raising the family and things like that. So it's just finding the time to look into it and to study it and for themselves. So it's all about educating themselves.
Claire, I see you also nodding. Do you want to comment on that, please?
Yeah, I think that's a big thing, like with the kind of Bitcoin community, that everybody is a cold plunging, steak eating, libertarian. And although we are mostly libertarians, we love to have ownership of our own lives. I think that there's room for everybody in Bitcoin. And so, I'm a vegetarian, I don't even eat steak, but I'm here. So I think there's this barrier of who's in the Bitcoin community community, and I think that's gradually being broken down. And that's one of the first barriers, and then it's the education. You know, it's then, is this for me? Are there like-minded people like me? And that's kind of breaking down those barriers in many different areas as well.
I think that's a really good point. We were talking at lunchtime, and we were saying that Bitcoin and blockchain and NFT and crypto conferences tend to be very friendly, and people are very friendly, and they say in this particular conference there's a lot of women, which is fantastic. It's a really good sign. But how do we encourage more women to come in? I mean, because it can be scary sometimes. If you go to some of the meetups, it's a bit of a sausage fest sometimes, and it's like, am I meant to be here? You know, and we need men as allies. By the way, this is not anti-men at all. The more men who bring their wives, their sisters, their mothers, their grannies, you know, their daughters, the better. So how do we get, Nicola? You work in a school. You're right in the heart of education. How do we get more women involved to the betterment of everybody?
Well, to be honest with you, I actually am finding it quite difficult to break that circle, even within my own friend group. So I don't know if I can actually answer that.
Perhaps you'll always be the ranting, oh God, Nicola's going off and get crypto again. Run in the opposite direction.
No, eventually I hope they do listen and...
Well,
yeah.
It is hard. Even like you've got Jamie Dimon there coming out, you know, saying, I'm not really sure about Bitcoin. Only 2 days ago from JP Morgan. Samuela, you are actually a very interesting person in your own right. Now, you're a libertarian, you represent Liberland, but you're also a digital nomad, and some of the other members of the panel have experienced that type of lifestyle. Do you think is it easier to be a Bitcoin maximalist if you're a nomad?
I don't like the term of digital nomad. I think... you know, I call it like intentional homelessness, if that's more fancy. You know, it sounds sort of remote to many people who live the normal life when you go to the office and so on, but I'm so surrounded by people who are crypto first. They don't have bank accounts, they don't have home, and they perceive work to be the home. They don't really see people, whether they're women, male, whatever. They ask for your Ethereum address rather. And to me, this is the norm, okay? And so even the topic, like whether, I don't know, Bitcoin is good or bad or so, to me, it's so strange because this is the norm I live, and I think it's really great to surround oneself with like-minded people. I think it's very valid rather than trying to make oneself adjusted to other people to sort of comply, but really just seeking what is truly yours. And so what was the question really? Digital nomad thing? Like, yes, guys, word is home. Use the currency that you trust in and invest your value into what do you value yourself, yeah.
I think it's interesting because it's either intentional homelessness or digital nomad, you can travel because you've access to currency, your own, the Bitcoin, if you're using it. But I think it's interesting that in the West, we look at Bitcoin and we think hodl. You know, hold on for dear life. We're not you're going to hang on, this is our pension, which is not a bad way to look at it because mostly we live, certainly here, there's a welfare state. So if you are down on your luck, you have some sort of support, so you don't need to necessarily go off and start playing play to earn games, whatever. But Claire, you also were a digital nomad for a number of years. Did you find that impacted your way of life, or did it come afterwards?
Well, it was while we were nomadic that my husband had the time to look into Bitcoin and study it because we'd sort of freed ourselves from paying all our taxes and council taxes and bills and things like that. So he actually had time to look into his own finances. So we just, our story was that we had lost our balance in life and we had 4 little kids and we were like, what are we doing? We're not spending any time with them. So we just quit everything, sold everything, and we were only supposed to travel for 6 months and it ended up being 3.5 years and just spending time together. So again, what was the actual question?
Well, I've forgotten.
Did
but I
Bitcoin
think
come first or the nomad?
The nomadness came first, and we were home educating. And again, we were taking education away from the state, which then then you start to look at taking money away from the state. And that's sort of, there's lots of crossovers.
I think that's a really good point you're making there, because here in Ireland, we learned to our cost that we needed to separate the church and state. And then, I mean, that's now accepted that the church no longer runs the country. People can believe or not believe, or, you know, comply with religious orders, whatever. But separation of money and the state, that's a whole new kettle of fish that hasn't really been addressed. Maybe Claire, how do you talk to your friends about separating money and the state?
It's like my favorite topic ever. But I actually read an article a long time ago written by Robert Breedlove, and it was talking about Bitcoin and the number zero. And he was talking about the separation of church and state at that point. And realistically, on the other side of that, there were so many people that would have looked at the Catholic Church and gone, that can never happen. They're way too powerful. And what I really believe is that in generations to come, there are going to be people that look back at us and go, why did they give so much power to central banks? Like, what were they thinking? Because we sort of think that with the Catholic Church. We're like, okay, we can respect the church, but why were they so powerful? And I think that's exactly what's going to happen with central banking. And I think that we've got to open ourselves up to hold some space for that, actually, because I think it's really important.
What's coming out to me from this panel is four women here. I'm very impressed by all your thoughts. But you're also embracing, it's not Bitcoin as a store of value or even as a currency. It's the whole value-led approach to what it does for you. It's empowering women. It's freedom. Claire, I see you nodding quite firmly there. Do you want to maybe add in your overall worldview when you come to Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, through the Women of Bitcoin that I've started in the UK, I've started speaking to women across the world. You know, as you said, in the UK or in Ireland, often on the West, it's often a store of value. It's for savings. But across South America and Africa, it's vital for and it's freeing a lot of women. In Kenya, there's a group of women called Bitcoin Dada, and these women who have no rights in society now have Bitcoin that is really helping them have rights, and they're not allowed to inherit any money, but they can with Bitcoin. So that's the kind of thing that gives me hope.
I think it is very powerful because women's rights are being eroded at the moment. We were discussing this at lunchtime. We had a very serious discussion at lunchtime, across, especially in America. But I'm just coming back to that point. How do you think holding Bitcoin empowers women in the Western world? As opposed to, well, obviously, you know, in the developing countries, it's a necessity, it's a currency, you have to use it to spend it because their own currency is not working. But how does it empower women? Samuela.
I'm not really the person to represent the Western world, honestly.
We'll jump over then. Claire.
Well, there's financial independence, giving women the rights, the choices. By having the backup of having Bitcoin behind you, gives you the ability to make a good choice for yourself and for your children, I suppose. And
I think we see increasingly, you mentioned that in Kenya, but also in the Middle East, where women have very little rights, there is a closet amount of women who hold Bitcoin and other currencies because they can. They don't need the permission of a father or brother or son, God forbid. So we are coming very closely to the end of our panel. We only have half an hour. But what I would like to ask each one of you is a takeaway. So what would you suggest to the audience here? Why and how can they get more women involved? Because like everything in the world, it's definitely better with there's more women. But I'll start with you, Claire. Would you give the audience a takeaway on what to do or what to think, perhaps?
Sure. I think that coming from Bitcoin as you can make money on this point of view is not, it's attractive to women, but that's not what gets them interested. As you said, they're so busy looking after their kids, you know, doing the school run, working often as well, that it's just like, oh, you can make a quick bit of money here. That's not what attracts women. But when you start to talk about the future and the future of their children and what the world looks like in 10 years if we continue down this debt-based Ponzi scheme, that gets women involved. That gets women interested. And the integrity side of Bitcoin, the honest, sound money, the open ledger, that gets women interested. So if you're wanting to talk to women, I think come at that that angle.
I like that. Yes, it's not just, I mean, nobody, oh, sorry, but women do not often just react to the money, the glitz. It's not when Lambo doesn't really work for me, but my future, I have children, yes, I want the world to be a better place for them. Nicola, what do you think? How would you attract women in?
I totally agree with everything Claire just said there, and not sure about how to attract women in because I've tried and kind of failed, but I think creating a community for yourself with like-minded people. I'm actually part of the Retire Early Club with Dinny, and I find that like what I've learned in that group is just priceless. And it's just, so there have been many times where Bitcoin has taken a bit of a nosedive. I wasn't trading at that point, but I would feel like, oh God, should I get out now? But having the support of a community and like-minded people who are there and have the knowledge that can say to you, no, hold on, everything's fine, don't worry. I think that's really important to have that community.
So the future and community. And actually, Cece said the other day he felt sorry for people who'd sold their Bitcoin at $87,000. Anyway, so it's the future. Hold on, get a community. Claire, what would you say to people to encourage women to get in and stay in and make the world a better place, maybe?
Yeah, I think so. I echo everything that these women have said. I think a lot of people think it's risky. A lot of people don't want to get into it because they think they're trading. I actually think it's the opposite to risk. I think it's much more of a security for myself. So it's the independence for women.
Okay, Samuela, what advice or thoughts do you have?
Yeah, I would encourage to seek what is true to you and alienate what is not yours, surrounding oneself with like-minded people who share the same values and who normalize Bitcoin, who normalize sovereignty, who normalize ownership of own life. I think that's very essential. And for encouraging more women, guys, just buy her treasure, send her some Bitcoin, onboard her easy. Okay, thank you.
So it is down to money.
That's great dating advice as well, by the way.
Well, I was going to say, you remind me of Andreas Antonopoulos, who used to, Mr. Bitcoin, as was back in the day, he used to, at the end of every talk, encourage everybody to give everybody else a few dollars of Bitcoin, just send it over the thing. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I really hope you've enjoyed the panel here. It goes to show, and I think actually one point that Claire said, well, actually, Claire and Samuel have quite opposite points there in some ways. Because you said, Claire, don't tell them about the money. It's not about the money. It's about the values and the future. And Samuela said, buy her a treasure. So you'll have to figure out what is the correct way for the women in your life. But thank you very much to my panel, and thank you very much to the audience. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's us saying the same thing.
Yeah.